YoungFolk Knits speaking. You need a pattern roundup all about cables? Coming right up. Hello y'all, and welcome to YoungFolk Knits. My name is Casey, and this is a channel where I mainly chat all about my love for fiber arts. I do a lot of knitting, sometimes there's crochet, spinning, sewing, who knows what else is tickling my fancy at the moment. I also like to chat about living on a small farm here in Arkansas where my husband and myself and our children are beekeepers. We love to raise chickens, gardens, animals, and we really love spending time outdoors here in the foothills of the Ozarks. So if any of that sounds like your cup of tea, then make sure and subscribe to the channel, and that way you won't miss out on any new video content. I'm back home. I'm trying to get back in the swing of things, trying to fight that post-vacation blues, that sort of weird thing where, you don't really know where you are or what you're doing because you really wish you were still on the beach, but that's okay. Came home to the most humid weather on the planet, besides the rainforest, Arkansas. Despite the fact that it is absolutely miserable outside, I am a knitter. And when someone thinks of knitting, I think the most classic knit fabric you will ever see are cables. I absolutely love knitting cables. Cables and lace are, in fact, my favorite things to knit. And that is the same whether it is winter or summer. So because of my great love of cables, I thought it would be fun to do a video about my top 10 knit cable patterns. And there's a little bit of something for everyone and every season. I did make a Ravelry bundle, which I will link in the description box below, so you should be able to just click on that link and see all these patterns, plus quite a few more, which I unfortunately just do not have time to talk about. Before we get started, I do want to share a little bit about what I'm wearing. This is the LANA vest, which is a pattern by Irene Lynn. I love it for so many reasons. First of all, it's Aran weight, so it knits up extremely quickly. Second of all, it has some super fun mixed cables as well as textured motifs. I feel like it transitions well between 3 seasons. I probably wouldn't wear this in the summertime unless I was not going outside and only going to be in a very highly air-conditioned building. But other than that, I think it's great for spring, summer, and winter. It has multiple different cables and even a little bit of a lateral braid. Did I say it knits up extremely fast? It does. I absolutely love the V-neck. I knit mine in Biche et Bouche Le Gros lamb's wool, which is an Aran weight, but to me it almost borders on chunky weight, bulky weight. It's a very heavy Aran weight, I feel like, and because of that I did have a little bit of trouble getting gauge. My gauge was definitely bigger, but I made it work for the pattern, and I'm very, very happy with it. Also has this super cute side detail of another cable with a split hem, and I absolutely love it. And before we jump into all the cable patterns, I want to chat for just a second about the sponsor of today's video. I've always had very unruly hair. It is usually pretty long and naturally curly. And one of the main things I have dealt with is horrible tangles, knots, and even breakage. And because of that, I became very interested in silk products. I did a lot of research into the benefits of silk, and along the way I found Lily Silk. Lily Silk is a lovely, high quality brand that produces some really great silk items. One of the things I picked out, and Lily Silk very kindly sent me, is this Maria blouse. This blouse is paired with a beautiful lace. This silk is a lovely, high quality fabric. About 5 years ago, I switched from a satin to a silk pillowcase, and even the difference just between those two fabrics has been absolutely amazing. Not only does it help prevent wrinkles in your skin, but it contributes so much to preventing tangles and knots and breakage in your hair. My favorite way to buy high quality luxury items is when they're on sale. And right now through May 14th, Lily Silk is having their only promotion for the first half of the year, and that is their Mother's Day sale. I absolutely love this set, which comes with a gorgeous creamy silk pillowcase, multiple different colored silk scrunchies, but it also comes with this absolutely gorgeous, luxurious silk eye mask. So be sure and click the link in my description box and check out the new spring arrivals. And if you see something you like, then you can use the code YoungFolk12 for 12% off anything in the shop. So thank you, Lily Silk, for sponsoring today's video. And now let's jump into those cables. Bundle I created, which you can find on my Ravelry page, or there's a link for it in the description box below. I added quite a few different styles of patterns, and I wanted to do that because I think knitters that do like knitting cables, we love knitting cables no matter what time of year it is. We want cables on everything we knit. And if you haven't knit cables yet, then just maybe you will find something you hadn't thought to add cables to before. So to kick it off, let's start with a couple of sock patterns. If you like to knit socks, but maybe you haven't knit cables yet, I think this is an absolutely excellent way to jump into cables. And that is the HYGGE Season Socks, which is a pattern by Sari Nordland. I love this pattern because, first of all, it's DK weight. And I know some people might not like a heavier weight sock, but DK weight to me is not anything like a bulky weight or even an Aran weight sock. I think DK weight socks are still nice and thin enough to not feel bulky at all in your shoes. I have actually made this pair of socks, and I knit mine with Magpie Fibers Swanky Sock DK in the color Eager Beaver, I think. So these just have that really nice antler style cable, which are extremely easy to memorize, just doing the same thing over and over. You're not even switching direction every few rows. You're just repeating the same cable pattern over and over. So I think this is really nice and easy to memorize. You're using 3mm needles. Besides the cables, I really like the ribbing in this because I feel like it helps create a really nice fit for your foot. Sometimes cables can cinch a fabric in, but the ribbing can help not only give it some stretch, but it can also add in the elasticity to have that rebound to also squeeze your foot besides the stretch you need to get it on. So I really love this sock pattern. I think it's a great option. Another cabled sock pattern that I think is really fun are the house socks, which is a pattern by Fiona Alice. This is also a DK weight sock. So it's published by Pearl Soho, and it is a free pattern. And one of the reasons I love this is because a lot of times when people think about cables, they sort of think about that braided look, but really a cable is anything that is rearranging your stitches. So your cables don't have to interlace and cross over each other. You can also use cables to get these really interesting lines, and I think that these socks do that pretty well. It definitely looks like that is twisted rib, which I absolutely hate, but it might be worth it for a pair of socks. I also think if you worked these 2 at a time, then you could easily memorize your pattern and get through it pretty quickly with that DK weight yarn. Let's say though that you've never knit cables and you're somewhat new to knitting in general, and you really don't want your first cables to be in some kind of garment or accessory. I got you covered. A great free pattern that you can practice your cables on is the CELTIC Cables Dishcloth, which is a pattern by Lily Sugar and Cream, which I think is actually a yarn company. So this is actually a worsted weight yarn, and you can make this beautiful dishcloth. The only thing I will say is that if you are practicing cables, especially for the first time, I would not recommend this yarn. It's 100% cotton, and that's not going to be super fun to knit cables with. You are rearranging your stitches, and when I knit cables, I actually don't even like to use a cable needle. I will just hold on to my stitches and do a little trick to move my stitches around on my needle as I'm knitting it. And that's really hard to do with cotton yarn. Wool is the absolute easiest thing to knit cables with. It's got a lot of bounce, it's got a lot of stretch, it's just absolutely wonderful. So while I probably wouldn't recommend making a dishcloth out of 100% wool yarn, I do think that that would be absolutely wonderful yarn to practice cables with. Another pattern I found is a hat, and this sort of falls into the cabling category, which is not your fisherman's cabled sweater that you might normally think of, but instead cables that create these really cool geometric lines. And that is the center point beanie. This is a paid for pattern, but it is $6 and I feel like it would pay for itself within a couple of hats. And what I really like is that the pattern calls for the Malabrigo Rios yarn. If you've ever touched Malabrigo Rios, it is absolutely fabulous. It's a sort of a heavy worsted weight. It's so soft and it comes in some really fun colors, so I think it would be really pretty if you wanted to buy a skein of that Malabrigo Rios yarn, you found one in a shop you love, you don't know what to do with it, make this hat. It is a pattern by Benjamin Matthews, and there's some fun samples in it. I really like that red one. But I think that that golden brown is absolutely perfect for this pattern. Okay, next up, let's talk about some clothes. First up, some tops. I absolutely love the Camisole number 8 pattern, which is designed by My Favorite Things Knitwear. And this is knit in fingering weight. She used Knitting for Olive Merino, which I love. It's a pretty decently priced yarn, especially for the amount you would need to make a top like this. One of the things I love about this pattern is that I feel like it could transition so well to different seasons. In cooler seasons, you could definitely wear this underneath a jacket, and you've got that woolly cabled vibe, which works very well for winter, fall, but you can also wear it in those warmer months like spring and still knit it in a woolly yarn, but because it's sleeveless, it's going to work really well. I also think that this would be lovely in a wool and silk blend. And one of my favorite parts is how the cables come up, and as it splits for the neck, it just sort of cables on around and the pattern is not interrupted. I think that's a really pretty and nice detail. Another super fun pattern which throws those cables in there is the Opulent Plunge, which is a pattern by Taylor E. Owen. This is a DK weight bralette, and I think it's really pretty and it has some really beautiful details. I personally find that I can't wear a knitted bra by itself if I want any kind of support, but if you're smaller chested or you're not wearing it for support, I think this is really pretty. I think if you knit it in a super soft, maybe even a silky yarn. So she suggested Magpie Fiber Swanky DK, and I think that that yarn feels absolutely heavenly next to skin, so I 100% endorse that. I definitely see wearing this around the house with your linen pants and maybe a linen shirt over the top of it, and you would be feeling very bougie. Next up, I wanted to share the Sanctuary pattern, which is a design by Stephanie Earp. Absolutely love the gals from Espace Tricot, so if you watch their podcast, then you've probably seen this top before. So this pattern was published in the Pom Pom Summer 2019 issue, and I absolutely love the color. Green is my favorite color, without a doubt. And I love this shade of it, so it definitely drew me in. But the texture on this is absolutely incredible. I love how the shapes remind me of a beautiful, almost mosaic style pattern that you might see on a trip to a beautiful overseas destination. And she used BC Garn BioBalance GOTS, which is a fingering weight, for the sample. I can definitely see this in a cotton or silk blend with wool. So maybe even the Knitting for Olive Cotton Merino. A few other yarns I think this might be really nice in is, I'm not sure how to say this because I have never heard it said aloud, but it's IGNEAE, so IGNEAE, but the Ovis etc. yarn. But I know it's about 60% wool. It has a plant fiber in it as well, and it has silk. And I think they've got some really lovely colors, so I think that would knit up really nicely. I also think that the Camellia Fiber Co. Flax fingering yarn would be lovely in this. It has alpaca and silk and linen in it, so I think there's lots of options that this top would just shine in. I absolutely love it. Now for a couple of pullovers that I love. First of all is the Perennial Pullover, which is a pattern by Nora Gone. This was published in the LANA magazine book, which was curated by Amy from La Bien Amie, and it was called Worsted. So this pattern is shown knit up in their Corey worsted base, but really any yarn that gives you a 22 stitch gauge I think would be absolutely perfect for this. I love how it has these really beautiful cables at the top that sort of come into a smaller cable motif here that goes down the center. I think that that is very flattering. And then down the back you just have the one single pillar of cables. It is simple whenever it comes to cables, but I think that it works so well for this pattern. I think this would be beautiful in every color. I do have the book and it is definitely on my list to make. Another cabled pullover I absolutely love is the Shifting Sands pullover, which is yet again by Nora Gone. I guess she's the queen of cables. This pattern was in the Making #7 issue, their desert issue, and the reason I love it is because it's just this incredibly organic yet beautiful cable motif that literally covers every inch of this top. I think it is absolutely stunning. It's not your average knit cable pullover, so I think it's very interesting. And I think that if you knit this in a yarn with some drape, it could be very interesting. I actually absolutely love one of the testers versions, which shows this knit up in a darker color with quite a bit of drape. So I think again, a yarn that has a content besides just wool or even superwash wool. This is a DK weight pattern. I think that something with some alpaca in it, some silk or cotton is going to really give you this gorgeous fabric. Okay, just talking about that pattern has moved it up on my list. Another cabled pattern I wanted to share is the Victoria Scarf, which is a pattern by Orsa Knits. I love this so much because it's a really simple cable pattern actually, but it's so classy and it gives it just enough texture while still being low profile. And I feel like the fact that all the cables line up and are going in the same direction gives it a little bit more of a modern cabled look, but also very 60s vibes in the sense of, here, let me throw this on, tie it with my big sunglasses and my houndstooth blazer as I walk down to the payphone. Bonus pattern is the Anticlon Mitts, which is designed by Emily Green. I absolutely love Emily Green's patterns. I think they're these amazingly geometric lines that make the most interesting pattern sequence. This pattern sample was knit in Magpie Fiber Swanky Sock. I think it's got a very modern look, but it also reminds me of sort of mid-century architecture. I love how it folds over for the fingerless mitts, so your hands are still free. I think this would be a really fun pattern to knit. Okay, you know what? I gotta share one more, and that is the Long Distance Cardigan, which is a pattern by Olga Putano Designs. She has designed absolutely amazing things. I love her colorwork patterns. This is one of her first textured patterns that I really took notice of though. The texture and cabling is all done on a panel of the sleeves, and I love that. I love the color that she chose to knit it in. It reminds me a lot of a color that I chose to use for Isa cardigan design, which has proven to be a very highly worn knit for me, and that color is one of my absolute favorites. And I think when it comes to a fingering weight pattern, the options are just absolutely endless, but I would probably go for either a wool yarn or a woolen cotton, and I think that that would be something that I would get the most use out of. Okay, I'm gonna force myself to stop here because there's so many more cable patterns that I love to look at, I want to make. Maybe I'll have to make a part 2 at some point. That is all for today though. Thank you so much for joining me. If you enjoy videos like this, then please make sure and subscribe to my channel. It really helps me out so much. And as always, I really appreciate all of your likes and comments. Until next time though, happy knitting.